John is, for the last 3 weeks now, trying to teach us two things. One of them is that Jesus is the Christ. John is a writer whose stories are not emulated by anyone else. He came after Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And he has a point that he needs to prove to the specific readers that he's writing. And it is to highlight the messianic part of Jesus' timelines. But the way he goes about doing it is of, I think, extreme interest to us, particularly at this time in the life of the church. Because what he's doing over the last 3 weeks that we've been hearing from him is trying to point out ways that we connect to Jesus, to the ways that we connect to God, the ways that we connect with Spirit. And so 3 weeks ago, of course, we hear that the Spirit blows out from anywhere that we know, and it blows to places that we have no idea about where. And so we hear this whole idea of us being moved along, and that we have to open ourselves up to that process. Last week, we heard ways in which we can connect to that Spirit. And so too, again, this week. Because what John is characterizing in the man that is blind is somebody who was vulnerable. And so in the end, he said to the Pharisees, because you see, you have sinned. In other words, you're not vulnerable. You think you see, you think you know the way. And in fact, as far as at that time in history, they did have the answers. But in order to move forward, to evolve, they had to let go of the old. But because they see they couldn't do it, they were not vulnerable. Right? Vulnerability is an extremely important part of who we need to be at this time in our history in the church. Vulnerable to the ways of Spirit which we do not know. In other words, we need to open ourselves up uncertain of what's going to happen. And that's pretty abstract. So let me make it a little bit more specific. In the last 2 months, there have been 20 people in this congregation who have gotten together with an archdeacon from the diocese to discuss the future, to discuss our mission, and to discuss goals to meet that mission. All things went well as far as I was concerned until yesterday afternoon when we started to discuss goals. And after 2 prior weeks and an entire morning of preparation, the goals were this: to put more bums in the seat. That's primarily what it said. That's after 2 full days of Saturdays and an entire morning talking about looking outside the box. Put more bums in the seats. Our mission in our parish, we decided upon, was we are a congregation who are open to spiritual growth. We all agreed on that. So how does spiritual growth relate to putting more bums on the seats? It doesn't. It's like we joined hands in a circle, but we faced outwards when we were doing it. Forgetting that what's most important about St. John's is what you are getting, why you keep coming to the church every week. And it isn't the fabulous sermons. It might be the great music, but what it is, from what I understand, talking to people one-on-one, it's about fellowship. When they come to our parish, they feel like they've come somewhere. And when they're not in our parish, they feel like they're missing something. Now granted, we are now getting like 50% of our congregation coming scattered now, not like, even when I started here 8 years ago, we were all here at one time. We're all doing our own thing. That's the way of our society, but we still are a group of people, I hear all the time, who make folk feel welcome. And yet, in all the conversations, we did not yesterday afternoon have a vulnerable one, where we shared what it was that we were getting personally out of the parish. And so what did we come up with as goals? Put bums in the seats. Where does that come from? Not being vulnerable. What if it's not God's intent or the Spirit's intent to increase the size of this congregation? What if it is to move us towards something else? We keep looking backwards, we're never going to be able to move forwards. We have to look at where we are, accept its reality, be vulnerable to it. And as that fellow from National Geographic said, we have to learn to love what it is that we have now. That's being vulnerable. Let us pray. Lord, help us to know that we are known. To accept that we are accepted. To love ourselves as much as you love us. And to accept our life as indeed full of grace and blessing. As we behold your time in Calvary, the summit of your vulnerability, may we have the courage to be vulnerable also. To live a life of absolute truth towards you. We pray this in his name. Amen.